I've never wanted sponsored revenue to be a primary revenue source. Like I don't care that much about MRR because I know that like monthly recurring revenue and content also means monthly recurring work. Like there's nothing more frustrating than when you see a creator that is like always running a sale.
That was Katelyn Burgoyne. Katelyn is the entrepreneur and creator behind the popular Why We Buy newsletter, where she shares buyer psychology tips you can implement quickly to make more money with your business. Since launching the newsletter in 2021, she has gained significant traction with nearly 75,000 subscribers and over 200,000 followers on various social platforms, earning her just shy of $1 million in revenue in 2024. This year, she is aiming to double that and hit over $2 million in revenue in the business. If you missed it, I wrote a deep dive on Katelyn's newsletter growth and recorded a video walkthrough of that, so check out the links in the description to get some more context there first. But today, we're talking to Katelyn about how she built the newsletter, what her plans are for turning this business into a multi-seven-figure one in 2025, and so much more. Now, onto the show. Well, Katelyn, I'm excited to have you on today because you have so much of a backstory with marketing, growth, failure, successes. And the one thing I do want to talk about first is you actually started this Why We Buy newsletter in late 2020. And then quickly you've scaled it up monetarily, which is exciting. So in 2022, you hit 400,000 in annual revenue. 2023, you said you crossed 600,000. And then last year you hit $1 million. And so that gap is huge.
You know what? To
Congrats.
be fair, we were 30,000 below that. I was estimating what it was going to be, and we were, but like for the point of like, as of January, like in January 5th, we hit it, but it was like 5 days
That's
into
amazing.
So like, to be fair,
Minor details.
Not quite, but so fucking close.
So close.
For all intents and purposes, it was $1 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you say now your mission is to build this into a $2 million business while getting lazier. And I love that. Can you talk about how you plan on going from almost $1 million to 2 million?
I can share like what's under the wraps right now. So we have a few lines of revenue, and I would like to have, I don't want to have, everybody's so excited about like MRR. For me, I'm not that, like, I don't care that much about MRR because I know that like monthly recurring revenue and content also means monthly recurring work. And like major in terms of like content creation, community management, all that kind of stuff. So that's not necessarily my goal. But what I want to do is I want to create more predictability in our monthly sales. And guess what? Like a lot of businesses that are content focused and launch products and sell digital products like we do, it's very spiky right now. So we might have like, you know, a month where we're doing like 400,000 and then the next 2 months, like 10,000. Like it's very, very spiky. And so my goal is to smooth that out and to actually be doing some, what I'm calling kind of like monthly recurring flash sales that from the audience's perspective won't be monthly, but from our perspective, it will smooth revenue. So the goal is we've got a few different products. I want to create some kind of like flash sales around those. And I want to segment our list so that we're running those sales to a segment of the list, probably like 1/3. It'll probably get a little bit more complex than this, but like 1/3 of the people will see that. That'll lead to like, you know, $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 in sales. And then it's just, we're not creating anything new. We're just running a flash sale to a segment of the audience. So that's part of the goal, which is like take the things we're doing and use urgency to sell those things more effectively, because anybody in this world knows that launches are really effective. And then once something's available all the time, people just kind of take their time. They decide when they're going to come. And so that's piece one. The other thing is we're building a better offer suite. So I've been running Why We Buy with a few of our own products, while I'm also the co-founder of Unignorable, and Unignorable we're winding down because I want to be able to focus fully on our own product suite. So I'm launching at least one new thing that will kind of be an introduction to our new product Painkiller. And then I've got another offer that will live underneath that is still in development. So new products, rolling flash sales, and smoothing monthly revenue is kind of the short version.
I love it. So is it safe to say that most people won't be able to buy those past products unless they're on the newsletter in a certain segment?
They'll still be available, but the deals will only be to people on the newsletter. Okay. So it's nice because like on social, I won't be like sale, sale, sale all the time. Because like there's nothing more frustrating, in my opinion, than when you see a creator that is like always running a sale. Like, or you go to their sales page and it's like limited time offer, and it's always fucking there. And I'm like, you're treating me like I'm an idiot. This isn't a limited time offer. This is you always happening. And it makes me feel very frustrated. So I would much rather be authentic about the thing being limited, but limit it to a portion of our audience.
Okay, that's super interesting. And you have this growth flywheel that you kind of outlined for getting subscribers. I don't know if this still holds true, but you're paying for subscribers and then you're segmenting them based on their needs, like, kind of like what you just talked about. And then you're going to have like a personalized welcome sequence, which is that already running too?
That's running and that's doing okay, but we're not doing a sale inside of that. We're not doing a deal necessarily. It's just like softly selling our products. And since implementing that, we doubled our digital product sales. But I think that what will be more impactful than that is people that have been around for a little while that have kind of like been curious about these products. If we give them a reason to buy today instead of tomorrow, like, which I think you can create that kind of urgency with a special promotion, I think we're going to see an increase. So what we have now is we've got kind of our, like, I'd say our core product we want to drive people to is this product Painkiller, which is a messaging system that helps you to fix your messaging. And we've got a really great lead magnet that's converting super great on Meta ads right now. So like, I think it's like $1.50 we're getting new subscribers for, which is killer. But the sales sequence we have for that, we're still tinkering with it to like get the return on ad spend as high as we want it to be. So that I foresee being another path to kind of this lazy approach to 2 million in revenue.
I love it.
Did you mention how you were segmenting your audience? Because you just said you're like maybe segment them a third, get an offer and that kind of thing. Like how could you talk about a little bit how you're thinking through that?
So I'm at the early stages of thinking through that actually. And I'm going to be talking with, I'm a Kit user. I'm going to be talking with my growth manager at Kix. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do that because obviously the easiest thing is like you take the audience, we've got about 63,000. So 21,000 in segment A, 21,000 in segment B, 21,000 in segment C, remove actual past buyers and then rotate them through the 3 offers. Like that would probably be the easiest way. Because we have 3 offers. So the goal for me is like, there's always an offer going on a monthly basis, but they only see a flash sale every 3rd month, unless we're launching something new, in which case they'd be part of that. So that's what I'm thinking about at the simplest level. But we also have the factor that people that do become new to the list tell us what they're interested in and like what their pain point is. Those ones would then be cycled in to the most relevant offer for them. So there's going to be kind of it'll be the group, but then it will also be new people automatically go into the most relevant segment. So I'm figuring out the mechanics of how to do that.
And would those just, maybe you haven't thought this through quite thoroughly yet, but would those new subscribers also would they be getting multiple offers at the same time, or would they be like excluded from that kind of?
If they're in a welcome sequence, then they're excluded from that. Yeah, so they wouldn't see that at the same time.
Wow, nice. Okay. Very interesting.
Sophisticated. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. It hasn't worked yet. So in my brain, it works. We'll see how it works in the real world.
I guess just selfishly, how are you keeping track of like how all of those things function? And like, so if something breaks, like
this is the beta of my existence. So we have built out a internal dashboard that's monitoring kind of our key sources of revenue. So it looks at, Meta ads, it's looking at Kit, it's looking at our landing pages. It's somewhat manual. And one thing I'm hoping that we can figure out with Kit is Kit's really good at showing you where somebody came in. And it's really good at monitoring if a sale came through, how it came through. So you can see the specific email or the specific segment that they were in. What it's not so good at is the middle of an automation. So like, I want to be able to know where are the leaks? Like if I have this complex automation, where is it leaking out? Where are people not opening? Where are they not clicking? How do I know which emails in a specific automation I need to adjust and improve? That's something we're still figuring out. I'm fortunate that I've got this really great analytics nerd, Bryce Crosby, who's also based here in Canada, who's helping me to build up the dashboard. He's like, this is a problem. We've got the beginning. We've got the end. We don't have the middle. I'm like, I know. So he's working on what can we be pulling from the API? How can we get a better insight into that user journey? Because as of right now, it's hard. I don't know if you guys have any tips on that, but it seems harder than it should be.
This is why I asked you, because I'm struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
And like, I hesitate to make things too complicated because I'm like, if something breaks, like where am I going? Like, I don't know. Maybe we can talk more about that in a few months when you figure it out.
Yeah, we'll do a replay. We'll do a kind of recap.
A recap. I love it. In the early days, you grew a lot with social media, partnerships, working with other brands and that kind of thing. I'm curious what your growth mix, as Dylan likes to call it, looks like these days,
Yeah,
from like organic, paid, referrals, that kind of thing.
I mean, I'd say that it's more paid now, and probably because I've been pretty shitty on the organic side at actually being intentional about driving people to the newsletter. I used to be a lot more thoughtful about it. I need to get back to it. Like, every Monday before a newsletter was sent, I would do a little teaser. And then the Tuesday right before it went out, I would kind of do another one, sharing a testimonial of somebody who loves the newsletter. I used to do that consistently, and I stopped doing that consistently. And guess what? Organic growth has not been as good. So it's like, go back to doing the thing that works. But most of our growth right now, like I would say, a portion of it's coming organic. A bigger portion is coming from Meta and from SparkLoop paid partnerships. So at this point, easily, I would say 65% is paid versus 35% organic, because Katelyn's not promoting the newsletter consistently. So this is all on me. Something I need to work on.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of other things happening in the business at this time too. So
too many things.
it's a
So
balance,
which is something that like I always try to remind myself, like, less is more. And so there's a few things that we need to put in place. I've shared this publicly, so I'll share it on the podcast. Like, I'm hoping that my husband and I are looking to have another baby. We are not pregnant yet, but like, so I feel like I've got this like very condensed time frame for like working myself out of the business so that I could like actually take a mat leave, because last time I did not. And so I feel like I've like, now is the time. There's like, so I'm doing a bunch right now that I probably is more than I would normally do.
Do you have somebody else on your team helping you with all this stuff, or how big is your team?
My team's small, so it's myself and a full-time writer who's helping she writes the newsletter primarily now. She's helping with, sales sequences for the different products that we want to sell. And then I've got a part-time virtual assistant who's very much a Jill of all trades. She helps with a lot of the operational stuff. And I'm looking to bring on a fractional COO. I'm working with somebody now on a kind of like freelance basis, but my next hire will be a fractional like operations manager, because there's more to do than what I can do.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a decent amount going on. I think one thing that I've noticed, like, it's funny that you say, you haven't been doing the things on social media that you you should be doing, but yet I see you posting, like, I'm on LinkedIn a lot more these days than I was, say, a year ago, and you're constantly coming up in my feed. So can you talk to us about, even though you say you're not doing, maybe what you should be doing, like what is your approach to posting on social media and growing that way?
So we run, myself and Neil Grady, we run a program called Unignorable. We're doing our last cohort right now. And the answer to this is never as satisfying as people want. And the truth is, most days I sit down, I'm like, oh shit, I need to publish something. And I like, what's top of mind for me right now? What's worked before that I can rework a little bit? I'm lucky to have a bank of content, having been doing this for a few years. So I know what's kind of like working, and I can repurpose a lot of that. But that's my system. And if you talk to a lot of big creators, people like Sahil Bloom, like that's their system. They sit down and they've got kind of a bank of ideas and things that have worked, and they rework them. So when we are doing a launch, I'm much more methodical. So I'm like, okay, we're 6 weeks out from launching a product. What is the main message that people need to believe to be ready to buy that product? I'm going to start spreading content with that message very, very often. But right now we're in between product launches. So most of my stuff is just like reposting stuff from before. And a tool that I love, because it makes it easy to surface that, is Hype Fury. So Hype Fury, you can kind of like, it pre-populates with your content. I just happen to have been tweeting for long enough that I've got a lot of content. And so if you look at my posts, shamefully, when we're in between launches, often it is what is either top of mind for me that day or reworking something that I posted 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you say it like it's just like, oh, I have this bank of content, but like you worked your butt off to create that. So I would don't gloss
That's
over
true.
that, because I think that's a big piece of this. So for all the people who don't have a bank of content, you will get there one day if you just keep publishing.
The consistency in the beginning is what allowed me to get to here, where I can repurpose a lot.
I remember when I took Ship 30 for 30 way back in the day, and Nicholas Cole's like, you want to create this like endless library basically of content that you can always kind of dip into if you need to. You don't necessarily always have to, but
Hmm.
that's your proof that that is something that can be very beneficial when you don't know what you need to post and just
Absolutely. And it's
go on
okay
to
to
Hype Free.
take
And
a break, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that we are so, I don't take a lot of breaks just because I happen to have a lot of content built up, but like there are days that I don't post anything. And I think that if you're in the earlier stages where you don't have that bank of content built up, like, it's okay to take a week off, maybe spend one day getting your month's worth of content ready so that you don't feel so you're constantly on the eight ball to like figure it out every day. It's okay to take small breaks.
I mean, I know you're kind of repurposing stuff from the past and that kind of thing, but have you seen or how do you feel about like the state of social these days? Because I know it's changed quite a bit. So I'm curious what your thoughts are and if you think it's still as valuable as it once was.
I don't know if I've changed. I don't know if it's changed. Like, I mean, X is definitely, I mean, before it was X, it was Twitter, and I loved Twitter. I loved Twitter. Like, all my friends were there. They were
Hmm.
producing great content. They were getting great visibility on it because they were producing fun stuff. X doesn't feel the same. Like, the engagement is different on X, but more so the tone is different. Like, what's surfacing in my feed, I'm like, I don't have enough time to be like, I'm not interested in this. And every fucking conspiracy theory that comes up every time Elon Musk shows up in my feed, like, I don't have time to groom my feed that much. Like, just show me good stuff. It used to be good stuff. But I
Yeah.
think part of why it's not as much good stuff anymore is because a lot of people have moved on. So I'd say
Hmm.
that, yeah, social has changed. LinkedIn, I recognize the value of that channel for my business. I find that it is a mixed bag. Like, most of the content that I actually love consuming on LinkedIn is from Unignorable alumni. Like, I
Mm.
love the content that they're creating. And like, I don't know if I just have been following the wrong people, but like, I feel like there's just a lot of people that something will go viral, then somebody else will post the exact same thing, and somebody else will post the exact same thing. There's just chase for eyeballs. And I want more insight and original point of view thinking. And it feels like it's lacking. But there are lots of folks that are creating it. So I think that there's more people that are trying to get into the game, which means more copying, more kind of like ready-made formulaic content than there maybe was before, because everybody's selling AI pots and like, like formulas and systems. And so like there's a lot of formulaic stuff, but there are also things that are people that are breaking out with like really interesting points of view, really true stories. So it's a balance. Those are the two channels I spend the most time on. And honestly, I'm like thinking I need to now move to a more visual channel because I do
Mm.
think with the both the channels I'm on, I'm primarily writing. And I think that as it becomes effortless to write, we're going to appreciate more hearing people's voices, like on podcasts, seeing their faces show up in our reels on Instagram or on TikTok. So I'm thinking about that because it's so much more work to produce this type of content. But I think that the return on investment is going to be really high because people want that. So they want to feel more connected. They want to feel like it's not just an AI generated kind of take to try
Yeah.
to, yeah. So I think this type of stuff is going to be more valuable.
Well, I think with your brand, just like when I think of why we buy, I think of the visual, like the colors, the emojis, and like your face and everything like that. I think it really lends itself to something like even Instagram. That I could see it being successful there in a lot of ways.
And I need to curate my Instagram feed too, because I feel like when I first started playing on Instagram, it was like, 10 years ago. And most of the people that like follow are like, the make money on the internet. Like, here's like my like beautiful home. And like, I work 2 hours a day. And I'm like, I need to I need to do a cleanse and like start
Hmm.
following the people that are imbibing the kind of the stories that I want to tell, because I feel like when I go into Instagram, I'm like, I don't like this place. It doesn't make me feel good. But it's because I'm not following the right people.
I have not done the Instagram thing very much. Right now it's just a bunch of dog content. So that's it.
Which is great feel good content.
Yeah. Well, that's all I post too is my dog. So
All I post is pictures of my son, and the only reason I post them there is because I want to use filters so that I can then share on Facebook where his like older relatives are. So like
Oh, that's funny.
Instagram is essentially just a tool for filters for me at this stage. Like my whole like bio, it says this is where I share random pictures for friends and family, but you can follow like on X and like so I need to. But as an entrepreneur, I'm like I'm being stupid. Like this is a channel I could easily be repurposing content on. It wouldn't even have to necessarily be video content or image content. Like you see a lot of folks that are repurposing. I think that most of Justin Welsh's posts are just pictures of his
I was
popular
just going to say
Of
that.
his tweets. Yeah.
like And like,
Yeah.
so like I could so easily be doing that. And the fact that I'm not is just me being a stick in the mud and being like, I don't like this place. Like, I don't want to play here.
That's funny. Well, I lurked on Twitter for probably 10 years before I posted anything. So maybe
Thank
you
you for
can,
posting.
Yeah.
right? So maybe someone wants you to post on Instagram.
I'd follow
All
that, I'm
right.
sure. I'm sure Chenell would too. Yeah, you
I
have
would.
2 followers right there.
All
There you
right.
go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it is in the kind of like 2025 plans. It's like I need to do it. I need to bring somebody on the team that can actually get excited about it. Because I really feel like as a creator,
Mhm.
your energy is going to dictate your output and your success on a
Yep.
channel. And like if you don't like a channel and you don't want to hang out there, you're not going to be successful there. But if you've got a bank of content like I happen to, and you've got somebody who's like really good at the channel and likes it, and they can kind of take that and rework it, then why
Yep.
wouldn't you?
I think that'd be smart. Be a good chance
It's a
to
good
run an
experiment.
experiment at least.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Before you came on, me and Chanel were talking about some of the experiments you've run in the
Mhm.
past. A few came to mind. One was a podcast that you started back in like COVID days, like 2020.
Mhm.
Do you want to
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. As you guys know, doing a podcast, like podcasts are awesome. They're also like an enormous amount of work and discoverability is hard. And so we ran it and I loved it because it allowed me to connect with a lot of marketers that I may not have otherwise gotten to connect with. One of my early interviews was with Rand Fishkin. And then like, 6 months later, he invited me to a founders retreat in Italy. And that actually got canceled because of COVID. But then a year, 2 years later, we did go and it was awesome.
Nice.
So I love podcasts. I ran that as an experiment, and I had a team member at the time who was helping me to produce it. And when I got pregnant with my first baby, I was trying to figure out like, am I at a stage to like step out of the business and like still keep this full time person on? And just the business wasn't at that stage. So I ended up letting him go, and it didn't make sense to continue the podcast on my own because I was like, I can't do a podcast with like a baby, an infant in my arms. Like this isn't gonna work. But I'm actually that is something I'm considering. It's like if I think a podcast would probably be the smartest way to produce some really great content that is more intimate than what I'm doing on LinkedIn and Twitter and sorry X, and then be able to share that across other channels. So it is something that's on my like consideration list. But that experiment it worked in the sense that like the actually when I look at the podcast stats, the podcast did really 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 well. Like, but to me, I was like, it was way too much effort for the impact at that time in the business.
Yeah.
So doing it again now and with what I've learned, and now that I have a better vehicle for discovery to actually get people to the podcast, it would make a lot of sense to do it again.
I remember in some of the episodes, maybe all of them, you had promoted like a lead magnet. Do you have
I
like,
don't even remember what that lead magnet was.
I don't either at this point, but I'm remembering when I was researching for the deep dive, I was like, wait, she did this. There was you almost had it as like your sponsor. I was curious if like it was driving any subscribers, but
It probably was, but like that was so long ago. I have a very horrible memory, like
so do
to
I.
a
So I don't know why I
frightening
brought this up without
perspective.
having.
Like I'll like start like outlining a product and I'm like, oh my God, this is like so good. And then like find like a random like document in Coda from like 2 years ago. I'm like, I already spent a week thinking about this 2 years ago, and none of that is top of mind.
Oh, it was a customer ranking calculator.
Oh, I still use that and I love it. And I'm actually working on building a GPT around that right now. It's part of a
Ooh.
couple of my programs, and I don't call it a calculator anymore. I call it a scorecard, but it essentially allows you to identify, 5 or 6 potential customer segments that you could serve, because this is a huge problem that a lot of business owners have, which is they've bought in this idea like I need to niche down. And by niche down, generally what they think that means is like, I'm going to go after 7-figure entrepreneurs who want to pay me a lot of money. Like they're not thinking enough about like the value that their product delivers, the problems that their customers have, who's actually dissatisfied with other solutions. So this tool allows you to identify 6 potential customer segments you could serve and then rank them on dimensions that are relevant to their transformation and to your business to help you identify who might be the best fit customer. And it's an exercise that I still use myself all the time, and it's really useful. And now I'm working on like, what does a more thoughtful version of this look like? And I'm building that out right now as a GPT. So you'll see that lead magnet come back.
I love it. I
Very
feel like
cool.
building out like almost like product business in a box with these GPTs because you're building. Okay, so you have figure out which customer
Mm-hmm.
you're targeting. Then you have like your messaging, and then I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the next step is gonna be like, what do they actually want?
Very, very savvy. So there, like when I think about when I reflect on the customers who have gotten the most value out of our products being unignorable, painkiller, wallet opening words, that love the newsletter, that see like a huge transformation, they all tend to fall into this one category, which is that they are generally service-based businesses that want to scale and they want to stop selling their time for money. And they assume that the way to do that is by launching a course or a community or a group coaching program. And I think that that is maybe used to be true, but looking at the future with AI, no longer going to be true. There's going to be ways to scale a service-based business that is highly productized, leveraging like AI agents, and it's still going to deliver massive value for customers, the one to many that we all want, without necessarily having to just educate. And so I'm really excited about that future. And I think a lot of service providers should be thinking about that future, because we've always been in this position where it's like, what's in my head, it's so hard to put it into my team's head and have them do things the same way that I do. But like, imagine if you could like train your own little army of team members to deliver the value for your clients. This is the future we're moving towards. And I'm really excited about helping service-based businesses to get there. And so I'm thinking a lot about the customer journey to moving towards that being the core offer. You're hearing something that I really haven't shared with a lot of people yet.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Are you building these bots and these agents by yourself, or do you have somebody helping you? Or
so it's like myself and my teammate Jordan, we build them together, and we kind of just, we have a process that we use, and I build some, she builds some. These take a long time. I think one of the things that really annoys me when I see like the AI experts sharing like, use this prompt and it's gonna like blow your mind. It's like 4 sentences with a few fill in the blanks. Like our bots take a day to build. They're based on, usually we're feeding them a ton of context setting information or frameworks or examples to help them to produce results. No, it's very common for us to spend a whole day to create one bot. Like, and so I think that there's a huge opportunity to like, but the thing that I think that we're really good at is taking existing frameworks or our own frameworks and then training the bot in that way of thinking so that they can produce outcomes that are actually way more valuable than what people are used to. So I recently had a really great freelance writer. He's working on one of these flash sale sequences that we're going to start doing, and he's awesome. And he had looked at our wallet opening word product, and he looked at it as a copywriter, and he's like, I'm a conversion copywriter. I'm really good at what I do. I probably don't need this thing. He never bought it. And so now he was helping me to write copy to promote it. And I gave him access to it, of course, so he could explore it. And he played with the bots. He's like, holy shit. He's like whenever anybody tries to sell me on their bots, I think they're going to be garbage, and they always are. So I just assumed yours were too. He's like, this is really effing good. Like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, I should tell people. I should help them learn to do this too. So that's part of kind of like what we're maybe working towards. I'm still in the customer discovery phase. I'm doing interviews with like past customers, trying to figure out if that's the direction we want to go in. But every conversation I've had has been, how are you doing this? I would pay for just those. Like, show me how to make mine is good. So
I was getting ready to say, if you just like recorded a Loom or record your screen for a day, I'll pay you like $1,000 for it.
Well, there's going to be, what I'm thinking for me to test this out is there's going to be for Painkiller, there's going to be a Painkiller Pro tier, which gives you access to the bots, but it actually gives you access to the prompts, and it will walk through how we built them, and then you'll be able to modify them for your own use case. So right now they don't see them because they're a GPT. So they just go in, they answer a few questions generally, or they upload, in our case, we have people create a messaging strategy. They upload that, then it produces a bunch of content for them, but they're not seeing what's happening in the back end. The pro version will give them the back end, and it will allow them to take them and customize and tailor them to their own use case. And it will also allow them to sell this, like, fixture messaging as a package service to their clients. So it's going to be hopefully a good offer, and it will kind of validate the bigger thing we're working on.
Sign me up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That is cool. I got one more question about experiments before we hop off. We talked about the podcast briefly. You tried a LinkedIn newsletter about a year and a half ago, and I've never published a LinkedIn newsletter or anything along those lines. I haven't talked to many people who have, a few people, but can you just tell us, it looks like you published about 10 editions. What was that like? Why did you start? Why did you stop?
It's one of those things again. It's like, why did I stop promoting the newsletter every week? Because I got So I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD. And once I got that diagnosis, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Dylan, you know what I'm talking about.
Same.
And
I think Chanel does too. I think we are all on the same
so there are
spectrum.
these things that work and they're
Mhm.
good. And your brain is like, but I want to fly over here and chase this
Yeah.
new fun, shiny thing. And so that was working. And we should keep doing it. And so when I talk about this new operations manager that I want to bring in, like one of the roles is going to be I want to find somebody who's specifically a freelancer who's going to help us with content repurposing and help us with these few initiatives, which are like weekly promotions of the newsletter, doing the LinkedIn newsletter, drive people back to the other. Like these things were working and I just stopped doing them. So if you're listening and you're not a complete squirrel brain, do these things. They work.
So the
So
10
with
editions was literally just like, oh, I just stopped doing that because
I had
I
a
was doing
team
other
member who
stuff.
was working on them, and then we ended up parting ways. She's doing amazing. She's helping with other things. But like I was like, well, I'm not going to keep this up because this is not feeding my dopamine brain at all. So,
Right. This feels like work.
yeah,
It's so interesting. So were you sharing the exact same content, or was it like half of the
no.
content and then
So what we did, I thought was kind of clever, is we're sharing past issues versus the most recent one.
okay.
So it was like, this is a past issue, and we were sharing only there was a lead magnet in the middle of the issue, so they would start to read. Then there would be a lead magnet that they'd have to join the list to get. And I think we shared in our particular newsletter outline. There's kind of like 3 tips, and then it was I think no, I don't think we did this. It was an idea, but we ended up executing it. It was the whole issue. It was not the most recent one. It was a past issue. And it started with like, you're reading a past issue. If you want to get the most recent one that's going to be on this topic, sign up here. And then midway through, there was a lead magnet in the issue. So everything was designed to drive them back to the newsletter, and it was working. And I stopped doing
We
it.
should clarify, when you say newsletter, you mean your actual Why We Buy newsletter, not the
Email
LinkedIn
list. Yes,
newsletter.
not the
Yeah.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
version. Because
Yeah.
you know what? We
Okay.
don't want LinkedIn to own our audience. Like ultimately, we want those people on our own list.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
This is why I've been so hesitant to do a LinkedIn newsletter, because one, it's like that extra step, but also, is it worth it? But it sounds like it might be.
I think it absolutely
Should,
is worth experimenting with.
I think you could very much just publish. You've always got a few different, and we're not doing a whole how Chanel can improve her newsletter growth, but really quickly, like you could just do a teaser section of your newsletter.
Mhm.
Like here's the first growth lever or the first 2 growth
Mhm.
levers that this creator built. Sign up for my newsletter and I'll send you the rest, kind of thing,
That was
and then
what
just
we
link
were
them there.
talking about doing, and that would have included like having like each one would have had to have like a follow-up email, but I think it would be absolutely worth the effort, especially if
Yeah.
you've got somebody on your team that can help execute that. Because I think in your case, I mean, you spend an inordinate amount of time analyzing these businesses, and the content that you produce is so effing good. That should be shared a lot. Like you
I
should be
know.
repurposing that a lot.
I'm thinking about doing a second weekly edition to share some of the past ones.
Yes. I think, I
Yeah,
mean, I think people would want it, right?
I
Yeah.
think so. We'll see. It's another thing.
This is the thing. We
Well,
need
Now the
people on our teams who love organizing the things. And that's like
yeah.
for me, that's my priority right now is finding that person who like likes to take the stuff and like make it like they're great at the reorganization and like execution as opposed to me, which is great at the ideas and the execution. Then once something's working, I'm like, and next.
yep. Amazing. Well, so I think this is a good time to talk about this new newsletter that you're doing. Can you
Yeah.
share some of like what the new framework of the content looks like and everything?
Absolutely. So, like, what I was thinking about is we were talking about should we add a second newsletter? It may end up being a weekly thing. At this point, it's bi-weekly, so 2 a month. But it's called Fry. And the idea is it's the only newsletter that rewards you for getting smarter. So it's super short. And each issue is a little quick tactical buyer psychology based lesson with an example, but then it doesn't give away everything. Like our current issues is like we're going to talk to you about scarcity or we're going to talk to you about framing. So you know what the example is. In this, we share the example, we show kind of the use case, and then we do a little poll using Kit's polling feature where we ask, do you know what this specific buyer technology, like buyer psychology technique is? And then you give them 3 options and they click on it. And when they submit their answer, they're actually entering a contest to win a prize. Sometimes it's going to be a cash prize. Our first one was a cash prize. Sometimes it might be something from our sponsor. So it's like, an annual subscription to their software, a ticket to their conference, whatever the thing is that makes sense. What I love about this is a couple of things. It is so short that super bite sized, people open it, consume it right away. It makes it easier for us to promote our own products because right now I feel like they're buried at the end of our newsletter. So this allows us to choose our topics so that we can frame them around the products that we want to promote that are our own. And because we send them to this thank you page after they complete their poll, we can promote something else. So we can promote our own stuff. We can promote a continuation of our sponsor stuff. So it gives us a second ad spot that isn't directly in the newsletter. So we ran our first one last week. The open rate was super high. The click rate was super high. And we're going to run our next one next week. And it's fun. It's harder for us to do production wise than our standard newsletter in some ways, but I hope that the long-term value will be there.
I love this.
I just opened it now. I went back into my email. I'm like, I got to find this because I remember seeing it and I'm like, oh, I'll get to that. And of course I did the thing where you say you'll do something and you forget. And I'm just going through it and it's awesome.
So it's fun. And the other thing that I think is our newsletter it continued to get it's quite meaty, as is yours, Chenell, which is why it's so smart to push them through to the website. It's quite meaty. And I know that my ADHD brain sometimes just wants a snack. Like I just want a brainy snack that makes me feel like, oh, I just learned something, but I didn't have to work very hard for it. And maybe something fun will come out of it for me. It's like a gumball machine, right? So I'm like, can I create a little bit of a gumball machine, give us a second opportunity to promote our stuff that is now kind of falling in the footer of the newsletter and the kind of like, you should know. And so it's an experiment. And my hope is that it will pan out and that it will lead to sponsors getting great return on their investment, us seeing more product sales internally, and our most importantly, our readers loving it and opening it consistently. So we'll see.
Yeah. Not to mention you get to all the engagement metrics. Like that's like gold for a newsletter operator. It's like, yeah. Like for me, I know a ton of people just like stack them up and read them all at once. And that's like, well, you're kind of like killing my open rate here, people. But which is fine. But like having this extra, like really short one that completely erases that whole.
I wonder if for you're talking about doing your second issue weekly. Like maybe the format of your second issue weekly should be super short. It should be like, here were the like 5 best takeaways from, let's say, like Katelyn or Sahu Bloom's teardown, and each one links back to the original. But it's super condensed as opposed to just being another one shared in its full format. So you kind of get the meaty bits, but then it keeps driving them back to your website. Instead of it being as long as an intro and then pushing to read the rest, maybe it could just be the takeaways.
Okay, that's interesting. I like it.
Less is more sometimes.
It could also be not to overcomplicate it, but I tend to do that. It could also be like a lesson, and then it's proven by a few different, because oftentimes I'm sure you're hearing a lot of wisdom that is repeatable, right? But different applications of it. So it could be a big learning, and then it's backed up by Justin Welsh did this, and like, Dickie Bush did this, like, and so it could be kind of like a one takeaway backed up by a few issues.
Yeah, I've been considering writing those pieces because it just, at this point, I'm not getting bored, but I feel like the story's the same, but the names are different. Like,
well, I think
that for 3 years, here are the things that they do, and like it's just all the same. But
well, when it comes to newsletter growth too, I feel like you're probably actually on the forefront of like driving that it's all the same, because people are reading your newsletter like religiously, and then they're doing the same things and they're growing. So like,
I'm the problem, it's me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, but you're the leader. You're like moving the needle in terms of what growth people are investing in.
Okay. This is interesting. I'm glad I didn't start the second newsletter yet. Maybe I should rethink this.
Or don't, just ignore me. But like, I think it's fun to play with a completely different format, because I wanted to see, I was like, when we started Why We Buy, it was a lot shorter. It was my original concept for Why We Buy is like, I liked James Clear's newsletter, and I liked how short and punchy I think his promise is like the most wisdom per word. And I was like, I love that, because like, if I'm going to open something consistently, I want it to feed me, and I want it to feed me fast and like nutrient dense, but I want it to be fun. And so our original was based on that. But over time, as we never planned to work with sponsors. Like, it's like, how do you hook them in the beginning? And then you have to have room for your sponsor spot. And then you also have to so like, it generally just became longer. And I was like, I want something super, super tight. And so it's fun to have a completely different format to see how it works.
I like that. I'm curious to see how that does for you over time.
Me too.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Speaking of sponsors, I know you used to work with like Mad Rev and the ConvertKit
I
network, and then
totally
you
agree.
had this like Justin Moore call on YouTube. And I'm curious, like, if your strategy has changed since then, or if it was like, Justin, that's a lot. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
I think that Justin's approach makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. I think that for me, I've never wanted sponsor revenue to be a primary revenue source. Like for me, it's like, can we use sponsor revenue to basically cover our production costs and me still put money in my pocket so that if we did nothing else, I would be taking home some money. But I've always wanted to build our own products. I never want to be relying on sponsor revenue and doing all the hyper personalized campaigns. We tried it in Q3 and we worked with 3 brands that I like absolutely love. And I was like, really, it was great to try something different, but it was a lot more work. It was a lot more work to think through like, how are we going to frame this and how do we work these topics so
Yeah.
that we're working them in, and we're going to do this webinar with these folks and we're going to do these social posts. And it became, for me, at least in my brain, I was like, this is a lot. And I'm like, I like it when like they come in, we already know what we're publishing. They like, they provided like direction on the ad creative. And so I think that I'd like to see a future that's like a hybrid where maybe when we will reach out to specific brands and be like, we can see you working really well for our Friday issue, and we would do something special with you where it's not just the newsletter, but I'll do something on social as well. I think I'd like to do it more like that, but the bigger, more complex campaigns, lucrative financially, but really mentally draining for me, because like I want to make everyone the like really really high value for them, and that takes a lot of thinking when you're also trying to create a newsletter that's really really high value
Yeah.
with products that are really really high value. So I'm still trying to figure out that mix.
Yeah. At some point, it kind of changes the content and like your content schedule. And that's not great for
It
someone who's
did.
creative and wants to do their thing.
And I found that there was a couple issues where like I got some feedback from readers and they were like, this felt like a big ad. And I was like, I
Mm.
can see that. Like, because I was trying so hard to produce something that like the content itself would be advertorial style, where it was like it's showing the value of the product. But normally we're not thinking about that. We're just thinking about like, what's the best lesson we can teach? Like, what's the best content we can
Hmm.
create? And then the sponsor gets to be a part of that. And so it was the balance for me of like be producing really good content and working the sponsors into it in a way that feels really organic and valuable to the reader is an ongoing thing that we're figuring out, because I don't want it to feel like a big ad, because people don't want to read big ads.
Nope.
No. No.
Definitely not. Yeah, I know. Justin's formula is so good. And I'm like, I want someone on my team just to do that. Like, if you can figure that out and do that for me, great. But I just don't think I have the mental capacity for it.
I think it probably works a lot better for creators that are in the more visual means, like, the
Yeah.
YouTubers, the Instagrammers. Like, I think it probably works a lot better for those types of brands, because their feed is such a this is my life, like, oftentimes. And like, it's really easy to integrate like physical consumer products into your life and do it in a really authentic way. It's a lot harder for me to be like, here's this B2B software that I don't personally use, but I'm going to find a way to make it like this, tell the story around it, even though my small business would never need this because it's for enterprise. Like, that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet those brands still get huge value from having their sponsored placement in the newsletter, because they're getting in front of their ideal customers in a place from a person they trust. The value's still there for
Hmm.
the brands. I think on the B2B side, it's just hard because it's like, it's much harder to pretend that you're using something, or that you're applying some like, or that you're going to some conference or whatever, if you're not, right? Like on the consumer side, it's like, yeah, I love this cleaner. And then it's like in the garbage like the next.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. A friend of
I
mine,
think.
his wife is a big influencer, and we started working with him. He's an incredible designer, and he was working on a brand for my husband's previous business. And like, he's like, our house is just full of boxes. Like, it's just so full of boxes. And she's awesome. And if you were to look at any of her content, like, she does an incredible job. I'm sure her partners get huge value. But it's just like this thought that like, how exciting it is to get a parcel as an adult? And then imagine if every single day you were just getting gadgets and like stuff in the mail from like brands that you don't know about. They just want you to rep yourself. You'd stop having you'd stop having that excitement about it. It wouldn't be like, oh my God, this like new cleaner, this new hair product. It's like,
It'd
oh,
be a
fuck, what
job.
am I going to say about this? Like,
Yeah. It's like, oh, I've got a new job in the mail. It just came.
exactly.
Yeah. It takes the fun out of it a bit.
So true.
We've talked a lot about newsletters and sort of we haven't really talked a lot about why we buy itself.
Mhm.
I'm curious what goes in, because you guys put a lot of effort and it's a really high quality, in my opinion, high quality newsletter.
Oh, thank
What
you.
goes into like basically an average edition, from like, ideation to actually publishing it?
I think that we are fortunate because we are basically conceptually, we've kind of got it down to these three things. It is we are actually talking about like what's considered a cognitive bias, which is a that's a geeky term for like a buyer psychology technique, something that's been proven
Yeah.
by science. Or we're talking about a brand and we're kind of like doing an examination of them and like what are they actually applying and using in their own marketing, which are fun to find out. Chanel, you do this all the time, like you do the deep dives. And then sometimes we'll do a particular marketing tactic. So we'll look at like subject lines and share like here are different like ways from buyer psychology perspective you can write better subject lines. So like format, like every format is the same and we've got that locked down. So coming up with the actual ideas for the issue, pretty easy. Like there's 400, 500 different cognitive biases. We haven't been running
Uh,
it that long. We've got hundreds to go through still. There's lots of brands that are doing lots of fun, smart stuff. So it's the choosing a topic for us is quite easy. The format is consistent. We make tweaks and we adjust and we try to make it better, but the format is fairly consistent. I'd say that the thing that is the trickiest is finding, depending on what the topic of the newsletter is. So this most recent issue was on stealing thunder, which is the idea of like, instead of somebody else being able to poke a hole and say something bad about your brand or your product, you do it first and you're basically stealing
yeah.
thunder and the people trust you more. And so that's fun. The trickiest part is usually finding examples. And that
Mm,
used to be the hard part. We'd spend a lot of time looking for like good examples that represented because like the scientific studies that we're pulling from generally are not marketing applications. So it was like a lot of time trying to find the examples. Now with like, Perplexity, it's a lot easier.
I
So
was gonna say AI is beneficial in some ways.
it is. So like
Yeah.
producing an issue from idea through to like publish to the audience, it's probably a day and a half of the team's time. Like, a day of writing, creating the images, populating it. Like it's not a insignificant effort, but it's quite systematic.
In terms of sponsorships, do you have somebody on the team who's responsible for going after sponsorships, or is it mostly dealing with inbound sponsorship requests?
We're working on figuring that out. So we have
Mm.
previously, this is one of those things where it was working, we stopped doing it. So previously, I have an amazing, I said like virtual assistant who also kind of like manages all of our sponsorships, and she had been doing some outreach directly to brands, and that was working. And then we stopped doing it because we got busy with like launching some other products. So we're going to start redoing that. But like most of our sponsorships right now come inbound or through our third party partners, and MadRev is certainly the partner that delivers the most. Shout out to Katie and
Sh-
Ben. They're
I was
awesome.
just
I
gonna say
know.
shout out to Madrev. Yeah, that's
I just
great.
had a call with her last week or something. I'm going to try and start doing that as well.
Yeah. Oh, they're terrific. Yeah, they're awesome.
I guess now that you have the 2 issues, that's going to add some more time to your team's work as well.
Yeah.
Because those are kind of new. They're not like
Mhm.
a tried and true formula.
Right. And we'll see. We'll have to see how things work. So we've got 3 in the can for this new Friday issue, and we're evaluating it because, like, it's like, is this, A, does the audience like it? B, are we able to fill the extra ad inventory because we're not going to produce it if we can't? And C, is it delivering on our goal, which is actually selling more of our own products on the back end of like the thank you page or like having being able to choose our topics more specifically because they're good examples that lead to our own products. So we will see. I'd say we'll probably give it a good 3 months and then decide.
That's what I was gonna ask. How long you'd take before you decide to continue on, or just to can
It's
it
not
completely?
very scientific on my it
Yeah.
really should be a lot more so. Usually it's like, what else have I been distracted by? Which is why I really need that like person who's gonna be like, okay, we said we do it for this amount of time. Like, what are our metrics to decide if this is a success or not? For me, I look at all that stuff, but it's more gut based than it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
What's one thing you think you could be doing better with Why We Buy?
I think we certainly could be doing a lot more on the outreach, like internal outreach, like to sponsors, because there
Okay.
are lots of products that are really a good fit for our audience that we're not actually intentionally reaching out to. So I think that from a business perspective, we should do that. it just makes sense. From a reader perspective, I think that there's some formatting improvements we could make to the newsletter. I think that there's some changes I'd like to make to the layout. I feel like we've like over indexed on design, and I want to kind of pull back a little bit. So that's an improvement I think it would make, especially for mobile reading. So that's on my kind of like to-do list. From a content side, I think we could do a better job, which we've started doing, of linking to past issues, right? Because so many of these topics have overlap with other things we've covered. And so we're getting better at using links in the issue to go back to our own archive of newsletters, which is where our products live on that website. So like we want to get people there. So we need to be better at that, and we're working on that.
Yeah, I think I noticed in the issue you mentioned, the Stealing Thunder, you had a few mentions from past editions and links and
Up until 3
click-throughs to
months
those
ago,
as
we
well.
really didn't have a website that made any sense, because like my original business was a consulting business, Customer
Right.
Camp, that then
Yep.
became Why We Buy. So like I was like resistant to send people to the archive, because I was like, this is just going to confuse people. But like I've got so much other shit on the go that like this is not a priority. So now that we have the one thing, actually, I should answer a better answer. So we built out something really cool on our new website, which is that we have the ability when we produce a new newsletter, we have this Kit integration that automatically kind of pulls it through to our WordPress blog. We have to do a little bit of formatting to like make it look good, but it's pretty seamless. But within that, we embed these ad placements that are global, meaning we can change them in one place on the website and they change everywhere. And we should be using those way more thoughtfully than we are. They're there, and like I think I updated them one time in the last 4 months.
Whoops.
Yeah. Oh man.
I love the new website, by the way.
The team at Studio did an amazing job. They killed it.
That's
Yeah,
great.
looks
What
good.
is the website? Just so for people listening.
LearnWhyWeBuy.com.
Nice. Okay. Sweet.
I could not get the whywebuy.com domain. Somebody has parked on it since 2008, and I'm like I don't even want to know what they're going to ask for that, so I just have never inquired.
Maybe it's super cheap. Maybe like sadly they are no longer with us, and they just have this domain in their Namecheap account or something.
I wonder how you negotiate that. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, no, I mean, it looks great. I love that you can segment by who you are. I think that's really cool.
Be a lot more thoughtful with that. So, because like the initial intent was like, okay, like you can segment by who you are, and we're going to give them issues that are relevant to their persona. And then we should present offers that are relevant to their persona, which we are not doing right now. We built the functionality to do it. We're not doing it. So like, I like to think that we're a big company with a lot of resource. And then I remember it's me and one writer and one part-time virtual assistant. And I'm like, all right, scale back the ambition.
Well, I think you've done a kick-ass job growing this, and I'm excited to see you hit the 2 million number.
Thank you. Me too.